The Galactic Council chamber was the largest room that most species had ever seen. It stretched across 3 kilometers of open space, filled with floating platforms where representatives from hundreds of different civilizations sat and watched and waited. Light came from glowing panels built into walls that curved upward like the inside of a giant egg. The air smelled different depending on where you stood, because each section was designed to keep its alien occupants comfortable and alive. When the human delegation entered through the main doors, the entire chamber went quiet. Conversations stopped. Translators fell silent. Every eye and sensor and antenna turned toward the 3 figures walking down the central pathway. Ambassador Daniel Cole walked in front. He was a man of average height, with gray hair cut short and a face that showed little emotion. He wore a simple dark suit, nothing fancy, nothing designed to impress. Behind him walked Laura Mitchell, his senior aide, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Next to her was Kevin Barnes, head of security, a large man who moved with the careful grace of someone trained to handle violence, but preferred to avoid it. For 3 standard years, humanity had been a member of the Galactic Council. For 3 standard years, they had endured insults from the Vorax Empire. Vorax raiders attacked human trade ships and stole their cargo. Vorax patrols harassed human colonies on the outer edges of settled space. Vorax diplomats mocked human representatives in open council sessions, calling them weak, calling them cowards, calling them prey animals who had somehow stumbled into the stars. And for 3 standard years, the humans had done nothing but talk. They filed complaints. They requested investigations. They asked for peaceful solutions. They spoke of cooperation and understanding and mutual benefit. The other species watched this with a mixture of confusion and contempt. The Nexari were tall creatures with 4 arms and eyes made of living crystal that could see in spectrums no human had names for. Their ambassador, a being called Crystalax, had served on the council for over 200 years. He leaned toward the massive Grothkin representative beside him and spoke in a low voice. "The humans come again to beg," he said. "I wonder what they will offer this time." The Grothkin rumbled with laughter. His species stood over 3 meters tall and weighed as much as small vehicles. They were covered in thick gray hide and had evolved on a world where everything tried to kill everything else. They respected strength above all things. "Perhaps they will offer their homeworld," the Grothkin said. "That seems to be all they have left that the Vorax have not taken." High Chancellor Vorath of the Vorax Empire slithered to the central podium. His species looked something like the snakes of Earth, but larger, with arms that ended in hands with too many fingers. His scales shimmered with colors that shifted when he moved, and his tongue flickered out constantly to taste the air. "Welcome, human delegation," Vorath announced, his voice carrying through the chamber's translation systems. "We are honored that you continue to attend these meetings, despite having nothing useful to contribute." Laughter rippled through certain sections of the chamber. The Vorax delegation hissed with amusement. Several smaller species who depended on Vorax protection joined in, afraid to do otherwise. Daniel Cole walked to the human platform and sat down without responding. His face showed nothing. Laura Mitchell handed him a tablet, and he began reading something on its screen. Vorath's tongue flickered with annoyance. He was used to getting reactions from his insults. The humans never gave him what he wanted. "Perhaps the human ambassador did not hear me," Vorath said, louder now. "I said—" "I heard you," Daniel said without looking up. His voice was calm, almost bored. "I am reading a report. It will just take a moment." The chamber fell into an uncomfortable silence. No one interrupted High Chancellor Vorath. No one treated him like he was unimportant. The Vorax leader's scales shifted to darker colors, a sign of anger in his species. Daniel finished reading. He set the tablet down slowly. Then he looked up at Vorath, and something in his expression made Crystalax grip the arms of his chair. "Yesterday," Daniel said, "a Vorax raiding party intercepted a human medical frigate in the Kepler transit corridor. The ship was carrying emergency supplies to a colony suffering from a plague outbreak. It was clearly marked as a medical vessel. It was transmitting on all frequencies that it carried no weapons and no military value." Vorath's tongue flickered. "I am not aware of—" "The raiding party destroyed the ship," Daniel continued, as if Vorath had not spoken. 47 crew members died. 3,000 colonists on the planet below will now go without medicine. Many of them are children. Many of them will die. The chamber was very quiet now. "This was not an accident," Daniel said. "This was not a mistake. We have recovered sensor logs from a nearby monitoring station. The Vorax commander identified the ship as a medical vessel and destroyed it anyway. He did this because he wanted to, because he could, because he believed there would be no consequences." Vorath recovered quickly. "If this incident occurred as you describe, then of course we will investigate. Perhaps compensation can be arranged. A committee could be formed to—" "I am not finished speaking." The words cut through the air like something sharp. Vorath actually stopped talking, his serpentine body going rigid with surprise. No one spoke to him like that. No one. Daniel Cole stood up slowly. He adjusted his collar. He looked around the chamber at all the watching eyes, and then he looked back at Vorath. "For 3 years," Daniel said, "I have represented my people with patience. I have followed every protocol this council has established. I have extended every courtesy to species who showed us none in return. I did this because I believed in diplomacy. I believed that reasonable beings could find reasonable solutions." He picked up the tablet again, looking at the names of the 47 dead crew members. "I was wrong." Crystalax felt the change before he understood it. Something shifted in the room, something in the way the humans stood, something in the quality of silence that surrounded him. The Nexari ambassador had lived for 400 years. He had seen empires collapse and species go extinct. He knew the feeling of a moment that would change history. "Chancellor Vorath," Daniel said, and his voice carried no anger, no heat, no passion at all. Just a terrible, absolute calm. "My patience has ended. I have spent 3 years protecting your people from mine. I have spent 3 years convincing my government to give diplomacy a chance. I have spent 3 years being reasonable." He looked up, and his eyes were empty of everything except cold certainty. "Now I am annoyed." The Nexari ambassador was already reaching for his communication device, his 4 hands trembling slightly, ready to order his people to run. The moment those words left Daniel Cole's mouth, the Galactic Council chamber transformed into chaos. But it was a strange kind of chaos, quiet and controlled, like water finding cracks in a dam. Crystalax pressed his communication device with all 4 hands working at once. His crystalline eyes flickered rapidly as he connected to his fleet commanders stationed in nearby systems. "All Nexari vessels are to withdraw immediately," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "Move to coordinates beyond the 50 light-year boundary. Do not stop for any reason. Do not respond to any communications from non-Nexari sources. Go now." His aide, a younger Nexari with eyes that had not yet learned to hide emotions, stared at him with confusion. "Ambassador, I do not understand. The humans have no significant military presence in this region. Our intelligence reports say their fleet is small and outdated. Why are we running?" Crystalax grabbed the young one by 2 of his arms and pulled him close. "Listen to me carefully. Your intelligence reports are worth less than nothing. The humans have been members of this council for 3 years, and in that time, they have shown us exactly what they wanted us to see. Nothing more. But surely—" "The Grothkin are leaving," Crystalax said, pointing toward the massive warrior species who were already filing out through a side exit, moving faster than their bulk should have allowed. "The Grothkin have never run from anything in 60,000 years of recorded history." Think about that. Think about what it means. Across the chamber, similar scenes played out among every delegation that had been part of galactic civilization for more than a few centuries. The insectoid Keth sent rapid chemical signals through the air, coordinating an immediate withdrawal of their hive ships to neutral space. The aquatic Delphori, sealed within their mobile water tanks, rolled toward the exits with motors whining at maximum power. Even the silicon-based Moravians, who normally moved with geological slowness, were vibrating at frequencies that indicated extreme distress. High Chancellor Vorath watched this exodus from his podium with growing confusion and anger. His scales shifted through colors that represented contempt and amusement. "Look at them run," he said to his advisors. "The mighty species of the galaxy, fleeing because one human spoke harsh words. This is what we have been dealing with. This is why the Vorax Empire will eventually rule everything worth ruling." His senior military advisor, a scarred veteran named Thesic, coiled with uncertainty. "Chancellor, perhaps we should consider why they are running. These species have survived for thousands of years. They do not flee without reason." "They flee because they are weak," Vorath snapped. "The humans have no empire. They control a handful of systems. Their technology is barely adequate for interstellar travel. What could they possibly do to threaten us?" Thesic had no answer, but the fear in his eyes remained. Vorath slithered down from the podium and approached the human delegation's platform. Daniel Cole still stood there, calm and still, watching the other species evacuate with an expression of mild interest, like a man watching weather patterns change. "Ambassador Cole," Vorath said, his voice dripping with false friendliness. "You have frightened the children with your little speech. Very impressive. But we both know the truth, yes? Humans are traitors and diplomats. You are not warriors. You do not have the stomach for real conflict." Daniel looked at him. Just looked. He said nothing. "Your people have spent 3 years talking," Vorath continued. 3 years filing complaints. 3 years asking for committees and investigations. This is not the behavior of a species that knows how to fight. This is the behavior of prey, hoping the predator will lose interest. "You may be right," Daniel said quietly. Vorath's tongue flickered with surprise. He had expected anger, had expected threats, had expected the human to puff himself up with empty bravado. This calm agreement was unexpected. "I am glad you understand your position," Vorath said carefully. Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small device, no larger than a coin. It was plain and silver and completely unremarkable. He placed it on the table between them. "This is a communication relay," Daniel explained. "In exactly 1 hour, unless you order the immediate surrender of every Vorax vessel that participated in yesterday's attack, this relay will transmit a signal to Earth." "What signal?" 3 words. "The humans are annoyed." Vorath laughed. It was a harsh sound, like stones grinding together. "And then what, Ambassador? Your government will file more complaints? Send more diplomats to bore us with speeches. Perhaps they will write a strongly worded letter." "Perhaps." The calmness in Daniel's voice made Vorath pause. There was something wrong here. Something he could not quite identify. The human was not behaving the way prey should behave. There was no fear in his scent, no tension in his body, no desperate hope in his eyes. He seemed almost relaxed, like a man who had finished a long and difficult job and was now simply waiting for results. "Why did the others run?" Vorath asked suddenly. "The Grothkin, the Nexari, the Keth. They have been in this galaxy far longer than your species. Why did they flee when you spoke?" Daniel smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Because they have read history," he said. "Your empire is young, Chancellor. 600 years of expansion, of conquest, of taking whatever you wanted from whoever was too weak to stop you. You have never faced a real threat. You have never met a species that pushed back. We have defeated every enemy we have ever faced. You have defeated every enemy who fought the way you expected them to fight, Daniel corrected. You have never faced humans. Vorath's scales darkened with anger. You threaten me? No, Daniel said. I am explaining something to you. I am giving you information that might save your species if you are wise enough to use it. He glanced at his watch. You now have 53 minutes. To do what? To surrender. To pay reparations. To submit to whatever terms my government decides are appropriate. Daniel picked up the relay device and turned it over in his fingers. After that, the decision will no longer be in my hands, and I promise you, Chancellor, you do not want to deal with the people who will replace me. Vorath drew himself up to his full height, which was considerable. The Voraks do not surrender. The Voraks do not submit. We are the greatest military power in this quadrant, and we will not be intimidated by a species that has spent 3 years proving they lack the courage to fight. Daniel nodded, as if this was exactly what he expected to hear. I understand, he said. I told my government you would say that. They asked me to deliver a message in that case. What message? Daniel looked directly into Vorath's eyes. His voice was soft, almost gentle, like a doctor delivering terrible news. We hoped you would choose differently. We hoped you would see reason. We are sorry for what comes next. He paused. We are sorry, but we will not hesitate. We never hesitate. That is something you should have learned about us before you killed our people. He turned and walked toward the exit, Laura Mitchell and Kevin Barnes falling into step beside him. 52 minutes, Chancellor, he called over his shoulder. Use them wisely. Vorath watched him go, his scales shifting through colors that represented emotions he could not name. For the first time in his long career of conquest and domination, the High Chancellor of the Vorax Empire felt something cold moving in his chest. He refused to call it fear. The observation lounge on the neutral station was nearly empty now. Most species had already fled to their ships, desperate to put distance between themselves and whatever was about to happen. Only a few remained, either too slow to escape or too curious to leave. Crystalax sat by the massive windows that looked out into the black void of space. Stars gleamed in the distance like scattered diamonds, cold and uncaring. The Nexari ambassador had sent his people away, but chosen to stay himself. At his age, running seemed pointless. If the humans decided to end things here, a few light years of distance would not matter. The door opened behind him, and he heard the distinctive sliding sound of a Vorax moving across the floor. He turned 3 of his crystalline eyes to look without moving his body. A young Vorax officer stood there, his scales pale with stress, his posture uncertain. Crystalax recognized him from the council chamber. Thesic, the military advisor who had urged caution when his chancellor would not listen. Ambassador, Thesic said, his voice barely above a whisper. May I speak with you? Crystalax gestured to a chair. Sit. You look like you are about to collapse. Thesic coiled into the seat, his serpentine body tight with tension. I do not understand what is happening. Chancellor Vorath says the other species fled because they are cowards. He says the humans are bluffing. He says we have nothing to fear. Your Chancellor is a fool, Crystalax said simply. He has always been a fool. The difference is that now his foolishness will have consequences. But why? Thesic leaned forward, desperation clear in every movement. The humans have done nothing for 3 years. They talked and complained and filed reports. They never once showed any strength. How can speaking 4 words change anything? Crystalax was quiet for a long moment. His crystalline eyes dimmed slightly, a sign that he was accessing old memories, painful memories. How much do you know about galactic history? He asked finally. I studied at the military academy. We learned about the major wars, the rise and fall of empires, the formation of the council. Did you learn about the Keth extermination? Thesik's scales shifted with confusion. The Keth? They are still around. A minor species now, scattered across a few systems. What about them? 2,000 years ago, Crystalax said, the Keth were the fourth largest civilization in this galaxy. They controlled over 800 systems. Their hive ships numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Their combined population exceeded 400 billion individuals. Thesik stared at him. That is impossible. They are nothing now. A few million at most. Exactly. Crystalax turned all 6 eyes toward the young Vorax. That is what the humans did to them. The silence stretched between them. Outside the window, stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the small dramas of mortal beings. I will tell you the story, Crystalax said. Perhaps you can convince your chancellor to listen. Perhaps not. But you deserve to know what your empire has awakened. He shifted in his chair, his crystalline form chiming softly with the movement. 2,000 years ago, the humans had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. They were new to the galaxy, curious and eager to explore. Their ships were primitive. Their weapons were barely functional. By every measure, they should have been easy prey for any established power. The Keth targeted them? The Keth targeted everyone. That was their nature. They were a hive species, controlled by a collective consciousness that saw all other life as resources to be consumed or threats to be eliminated. When they found humanity, they saw a young species ripe for conquest. Crystalax paused, remembering. The humans tried diplomacy first. They always tried diplomacy first. They sent ambassadors to negotiate. They offered trade agreements and cultural exchange. They spoke of peace and cooperation and mutual benefit. The Keth refused. The Keth laughed at them. And then, during what was supposed to be a diplomatic meeting, a Keth hive queen killed a human child. The child had wandered into the meeting chamber by accident. The queen killed her as a demonstration of Keth superiority, a message to show the humans their place. Thesik's scales went pale. What happened? The human ambassador present was a woman named Catherine Lewis. She watched the queen kill the child, and she said 3 words. Crystalax's eyes flickered with old pain. I am annoyed. That phrase again. Yes, that phrase. Crystalax stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Within 1 year, the humans had mapped every Keth system, every hive ship route, every resource depot and breeding world. They did this quietly, using probes and infiltrators and methods no one had seen before. Reconnaissance. Standard military practice. Not reconnaissance, Crystalax said. Planning. The humans were not preparing for war. They were preparing for extermination. He turned back to face Thesik. In year 2, human ships began appearing in Keth space. Not warships, not at first. Medical vessels, research stations, civilian transports. The Keth destroyed them all, laughing at human weakness. They did not realize that each destroyed ship taught the humans something new about Keth defenses. They sacrificed their own people. They volunteered. Every human on those ships knew they would die. They went anyway. They went because their species had been insulted, and a child had been murdered, and humans do not forget such things. They do not forgive. Thesik felt cold spreading through his body. In year 3, the real attack began. Except it was not an attack, not in any way the Keth understood. Human ships did not engage Keth fleets in battle. They simply appeared in systems, deployed weapons, and vanished before the Keth could respond. The weapons were patient things, devices that waited for the right moment to strike. Biological agents tailored specifically to Keth physiology. Computer systems designed to corrupt hive-mind communications. Biological weapons? Thesik whispered. That violates every— The humans did not sign those treaties, Crystallax said. They were too new to the galaxy. And even if they had signed them, I do not think it would have mattered. When humans fight, they do not follow rules. They do not seek glory or honor or fair combat. They seek endings. Permanent, absolute endings. He returned to his chair, suddenly looking very old. By year 5, the Keth swarm was effectively destroyed, not defeated, not conquered, destroyed. Their 800 systems were reduced to empty graves. Their 400 billion individuals were reduced to less than 8 million scattered survivors. The humans did not occupy their worlds or claim their resources. They simply erased the Keth as a functional civilization and then went home. Why? Thesic asked. Why such total destruction? Crystalllax looked at him with something like pity. Because the humans are persistence predators. Do you understand what that means? On their homeworld, they evolved to chase prey across vast distances, never stopping, never tiring, never giving up. They did not hunt by being faster or stronger. They hunted by being relentless, by being patient. By following their target until it collapsed from exhaustion? But that was hunting animals. We are intelligent beings. It makes no difference to them, Crystalllax said. When humans identify a threat, they do not stop until that threat no longer exists. Not until it surrenders. Not until it promises to behave. Until it no longer exists. They will wait years, decades, even generations if necessary. But they will not stop. A chime sounded through the station. 40 minutes remained on Daniel Cole's deadline. Go to your Chancellor, Crystalllax said. Tell him everything I have told you. Beg him to surrender if you must. Thesic rose, his body trembling. Do you think he will listen? Crystalllax's crystalline eyes dimmed with sadness. No, he said. I do not think he will. And I am sorry for your people, young one. I truly am. Because by the time you see the humans coming, it will already be far, far too late. Thesic moved through the corridors of the neutral station as fast as his serpentine body could carry him. His scales scraped against the floor with a desperate rhythm, and his heart pounded with fear he had never known before. The story Crystalllax had told him burned in his mind like acid. 400 billion Keth. Reduced to 8 million in 5 years. He found Chancellor Vorath in the Vorax delegation's private quarters, surrounded by military advisors and communication officers. The atmosphere was tense but confident. These were warriors who had never known defeat, leaders who had built an empire through strength and aggression. They did not understand what was coming. Chancellor, Thesic said, sliding into the room. I must speak with you. It is urgent. Vorath turned his head slowly, his scales shifting with irritation. Thesic, you look like prey that has seen a predator. Where is your composure? Chancellor, I have been speaking with the Nexari ambassador. He told me things about the humans, things we need to consider before the deadline passes. The Nexari are cowards who fled at the first sign of difficulty, Vorath said dismissively. I am not interested in their bedtime stories. The Keth, Thesic said desperately. 2,000 years ago, the humans destroyed the Keth swarm. 400 billion dead. Their entire civilization erased in 5 years. Vorath's tongue flickered with amusement. Old propaganda designed to frighten primitive species. The Keth were weak. They fell to internal conflict, not human aggression. That is not true. I have seen the records. The Nexari ambassador lived through that time. He spoke with survivors. The humans did this deliberately, systematically, without mercy or hesitation. Enough. Vorath's voice cracked like a whip. I will not have my officers spreading fear and doubt among our forces. The humans are nothing. They have shown us nothing but weakness for 3 years. One angry speech does not change what they are. But Chancellor, I said enough. Vorath turned back to his communication officers. What is the status of our flagship? Weapons fully charged, Chancellor. We are prepared to destroy the neutral station on your command. A show of strength to remind the galaxy who truly holds power here. Vorath's scales brightened with satisfaction. Excellent. When the humans' deadline passes, we will demonstrate what happens to those who threaten the Vorax Empire. Thesic felt despair washing over him. He had tried. He had warned them. There was nothing more he could do. And then, without warning, every light in the room flickered. What was that? Vorath demanded. The communication officer's scales went pale. His fingers moved across his console with increasing desperation. Chancellor, I am receiving reports from the flagship. Their weapons systems have gone offline. What? How? Unknown. The technical crew is investigating. The officer paused, listening to his earpiece. Chancellor, it is not just the flagship. Every Vorax vessel in the sector is reporting the same malfunction. Weapons, shields, navigation systems, all failing simultaneously. The room went silent. Vorath's scales shifted through colors that had no names, emotions that had no words. That is impossible, he said slowly. Our encryption protocols are the most advanced in the quadrant. No one can hack Vorax military systems. The communication officer's voice trembled. Chancellor, the technical analysis is coming in now. They have identified the source of the intrusion. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. It came from code we captured from the human medical frigate, the one we destroyed yesterday. Thesic felt his blood turn to ice. They let us take it, he whispered. They let us destroy their ship and capture their systems. They knew we would integrate the code into our networks. They planned this. Vorath stared at him, and for the first time, doubt flickered in the Chancellor's eyes. Contact our homeworld, Vorath ordered. Alert the defense fleet. Tell them... I have been trying, Chancellor. The communication officer's hands were shaking now. All channels to Vorax Prime are blocked. Not jammed. Blocked. The signals are being absorbed by something between here and there. Something we cannot detect. 30 minutes remained on the deadline. Vorath moved toward the door. I must speak with the human ambassador. Perhaps we can negotiate. Perhaps there is still time to reach an agreement. Thesic followed him through the corridors, and with every meter they traveled, more reports came in. Vorax ships throughout the region were going dark, their systems failing one by one. Automated defense platforms were shutting down. Communication relays were going silent. It was as if an invisible hand was reaching through space and turning off everything the Vorax had built. They found Daniel Cole in the council chamber, sitting alone at the human delegation's table. Laura Mitchell and Kevin Barnes stood nearby, their faces calm and patient. They looked like people waiting for a train they knew would arrive on schedule. Ambassador Cole, Vorath said, and his voice had lost its arrogance. We should talk. Daniel looked up from his tablet. Chancellor, I wondered if you would come. What do you want? Name your terms. We can negotiate. Daniel shook his head slowly. 20 minutes ago, I wanted surrender and reparations. You could have kept your fleet, your government, your pride. All I asked for was justice for the 47 people you murdered. Then let us discuss. 10 minutes ago, I wanted unconditional surrender and the dissolution of your military command structure. Your species would have survived, but your empire would have ended. That was the price of your stubbornness. Vorath's scales were shifting rapidly now, colors bleeding into each other. And now? What do you want now? Daniel stood up slowly. He looked at Vorath with something that might have been sadness, or might have been pity, or might have been nothing at all. Now I want nothing you can give me, he said. The deadline has passed. The message has been sent. What happens next is no longer my decision. What message? What are you talking about? 3 words, Chancellor. transmitted to every human ship, station, and colony in the galaxy. The humans are annoyed. Daniel picked up his tablet and tucked it under his arm. Within 12 hours. Our military assets will begin mobilizing. Within a week, the first response teams will arrive in Vorax space. Within a month? How many ships? Vorath demanded. Your fleet is small. Our intelligence says you have fewer than 200 combat vessels. Daniel smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Thesic had ever seen on any face. Chancellor, ships are not how humans wage war. Then how? What will you do to us? Daniel walked toward the exit. He paused at the doorway and looked back. We will do what we did to the Keth. We will do what we have done to every species that refused to learn from our patience. We will be thorough. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. We will be complete. You cannot destroy an empire, Vorath said. We have trillions of citizens, thousands of worlds. You cannot possibly... Chancellor Vorath, Daniel said quietly. You have spent 3 years believing that our patience was weakness. You have spent 3 years assuming that because we did not fight, we could not fight. You have spent 3 years testing the limits of human tolerance. He stepped through the doorway. Now you will learn what happens when those limits are exceeded. I am sorry. I truly am. I tried to save your people from this, but you would not let me. The door closed behind him. Thesic stood in the silent chamber, watching his chancellor try to process what had just happened. Vorath's scales had gone completely gray, a color that Thesic had never seen before. It was the color of a Vorax who had given up hope. Through the windows, the stars continued their eternal dance, but now they seemed colder somehow. More distant, more indifferent to the small lives that flickered and died in the vast darkness between them. The countdown was over. The waiting had just begun. 3 months passed, and the entity known as the Vorax Empire ceased to exist. It happened so quietly that most of the galaxy did not understand what they were witnessing until it was over. There were no great battles, no dramatic fleet engagements, no heroic last stands. The Vorax simply fell apart piece by piece, system by system, like a building whose foundation had been removed while no one was looking. The human response began with small things. Drone swarms appeared in Vorax military installations, machines no larger than insects that moved through ventilation systems and power conduits. They did not attack. They simply watched. They recorded. They waited. Then the accidents started. A weapons depot suffered a catastrophic malfunction. A shipyard's containment systems failed. A communication relay developed errors that spread to every system it touched. Each incident seemed unconnected to the others. Each incident could be explained as simple bad luck. But the Vorax leadership knew better. They understood that they were being taken apart with surgical precision, that every failure was deliberate, that every accident was planned. They tried to fight back, but there was nothing to fight. The humans never appeared. They never announced themselves. They simply continued their patient, methodical work of dismantling everything the Vorax had built. The virus that had been hidden in the captured medical frigate spread through every Vorax computer system, corrupting files, altering records, revealing secrets. Evidence of Chancellor Vorath's crimes was leaked to the Vorax population. Financial records showing corruption and theft were made public. Communications proving that the attack on the medical frigate had been ordered from the highest levels of government appeared on every news network. The Vorax people, who had been taught to worship their leaders as conquering heroes, learned the truth about the empire built in their name. Protests began. Governments fell. Military units refused orders. Within 2 months, the Vorax were fighting themselves more effectively than any external enemy could have managed. Chancellor Vorath was arrested by his own people, tried for war crimes, and sentenced to life imprisonment on a barren moon at the edge of Vorax space. His replacement was a young officer named Thesic. who had tried to warn him and been ignored. Thesic signed a comprehensive peace treaty with humanity and began the long process of rebuilding Vorax society along different principles. The human ships that had been mobilizing returned to their home systems. The drones that had infiltrated Vorax space went dormant. The virus that had corrupted their networks was removed. And just like that, the crisis was over. Daniel Cole returned to his quiet office on Earth, where he resumed his work handling trade agreements and minor diplomatic disputes. He never spoke publicly about what had happened. He never claimed credit for the fall of the Vorax Empire. He simply went back to being a mid-level government employee who occasionally attended meetings that most people found boring. Laura Mitchell was promoted to lead her own diplomatic delegation, assigned to a peaceful sector where nothing much ever happened. Kevin Barnes retired from government service entirely and moved to a small farm in Montana where he raised horses and spent his evenings watching the sun set over mountains that had stood unchanged for millions of years. 6 months after the Vorax collapse, the Galactic Council reconvened. The chamber was fuller than it had ever been. Representatives from over 200 species filled every available space, packed into seats and floating platforms, and even the observation galleries that were normally reserved for students and tourists. They had come to observe, to learn, to understand. The new human ambassador was a woman named Megan Torres. She was younger than Daniel Cole had been, with dark hair and calm brown eyes that missed nothing. She took her seat at the human delegation's table with quiet dignity, arranging her materials with careful precision. Crystallax approached her during a recess in the proceedings. His crystalline eyes studied her with ancient curiosity. "Ambassador Torres," he said, "may I speak with you privately?" "Of course, Ambassador Crystalllax." She gestured to a quiet alcove away from the main chamber. "What can I do for you?" They settled into chairs facing each other, two representatives of species separated by hundreds of years of evolution and thousands of light years of space. "I have a question," Crystalllax said, "one that has troubled me since the Vorax incident ended." "Please ask." "Your people had the capability to destroy the Vorax completely. Every analysis suggests you could have reduced their civilization to nothing, just as you did with the Keth 2,000 years ago. By most standards of galactic justice, you would have been justified in doing so." He paused. "Why did you stop?" Megan considered the question carefully. She was silent for a long moment, looking out the window at the stars that filled the void beyond the station. "We are not conquerors," she said finally. "We do not want empire. We do not want to rule other species or claim their worlds or impose our values on civilizations that have their own ways of living. All we have ever wanted is to exist in peace, to explore, to build, to create, to raise our children and bury our dead and look up at the stars with wonder. Yet you destroyed the Keth. The Keth could not be stopped any other way. They were a hive mind, Ambassador. They could not negotiate or compromise or change. Their very nature required them to consume or destroy everything they encountered. We tried to find another solution. We spent years looking for alternatives. In the end, we did what we had to do to survive. And the Vorax? The Vorax were different. They were individuals, capable of choice, capable of change. Their leaders were corrupt, but their people were not evil. We removed the leadership. We exposed the truth. We gave the Vorax population the information they needed to make their own decisions." She turned back to face him. They chose to change. They chose peace. That was their choice, and we respect it. Crystalllax nodded slowly, his crystalline form chiming with the movement. "The other species ask me about humans. They want to understand why you are so frightening. You seem so reasonable, so peaceful, so willing to compromise." Megan smiled. It was a warm smile, genuine and friendly. But somewhere behind her eyes, Crystalax caught a glimpse of something vast and patient and absolutely certain. "We are all of those things," she said, "right up until the moment we are not." She stood, preparing to return to the council session. "Ambassador Crystalax, may I share something with you? A piece of wisdom from humanity to the galaxy?" "Please. We want to be friends with every species we meet. We want to trade and learn and grow together. We want to share knowledge and art and music. We want to build a future where all sentient beings can thrive." Her voice was gentle, almost soft. "Be kind to us. Disagree with us. Argue with us. Challenge us. That is all fine. That is how civilizations grow." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice had changed. The warmth was still there, but underneath it was something harder, something older, something that had learned terrible lessons through terrible experience. "But when a human tells you they are annoyed, do not test us. Do not assume it is a bluff. Do not believe that because we were patient yesterday, we will be patient tomorrow." She met his crystalline eyes directly. "When a human says they are annoyed, you run. You run as fast and as far as you can. Because by the time you see us coming, by the time you understand what you have done, it is already far, far too late." She walked back toward the council chamber, her footsteps echoing in the quiet alcove. Crystalax watched her go, this small creature from a small world, representative of a species that had been traveling among the stars for only a few thousand years. She looked so ordinary, so harmless, so completely unremarkable, and that, he realized, was the most terrifying thing of all. The humans were not frightening because they were powerful. They were frightening because you could never tell when their patience would end. You could never know which insult would be the last one, which injury would push them over the edge, which moment would transform them from friendly neighbors into something that would not stop until you no longer existed. He thought about the Keth, scattered and broken across the galaxy. He thought about the Vorax, their empire reduced to ashes in 3 short months. He thought about all the species who had underestimated humanity, who had mistaken patience for weakness and kindness for cowardice. And he made a quiet promise to himself, a promise he would keep for the rest of his very long life. He would never, ever give the humans a reason to be annoyed.